all of those who volunteered, all of those who doubled up as healthcare persons, and we know it was a very, very tough time. I know how I felt when I heard the number of deaths and the rising, and I look at the chart and it's just going up to the sky, how devastating it was for me. So I know how Grenadians would have felt with our small population. So I'm just grateful for all of the forces that came together to assist us, and now we've seen a downward trend, and I pray God that this trend continues. I also want to say to our Grenadian people that the world is recognizing that we have to get used to a new normal. When I looked at New Zealand, they had gone down to 0, and it was laudable. But now the Prime Minister is saying that with the present situation, they have to look at how we adjust to the new normal, and everybody is saying the same thing. So even when numbers are going up, you find countries are preparing to open up and to give some kind of livelihood and get lives back in a certain way, in a different way, but get lives back on track. So this new normal is very critical, and so all of the different loosenings that the Prime Minister would have spoken to, they're very relevant. Some people might think it's not enough. Some people might think it's too much. But the reality is we do have to start some mild opening up. I believe that it's conservative and it needs to be so. When we look at the number of deaths we still have, yesterday's was, let me just see what it was, the 3rd, the 4th, it was 83 confirmed cases. The day before, 57. So while we're still keeping under 100, remember, we were 260 something plus, it is still an appreciable reduction, but still a lot of work needs to be done, and a lot will depend on how we manage the balance between livelihood and saving lives. A lot will depend on how we observe and adhere to the protocols. This is critical. We cannot do mass gatherings, ignore the basic protocols, washing hands, wearing your mask, and so on, and still expect nobody gets sick, nobody dies. We each have to take responsibility for our own health and for the health and the lives of those around us. So that is very critical. So just these generalizations I wanted to say before I come to, I know a number of persons have been asking, both our visitors, our locals, Grenadians, especially when they come with families, and the persons in the tourism sector. So I think the Prime Minister left that for me to say, that a reduction in the PCR test, because perhaps for one individual, it is not too bad, but when you have a family, it becomes quite a burden. And we have looked at what other islands are doing, and we're saying if they can do it and they can succeed in what the objective, we think we can do it too. So like everything else, we're going gradual. So I am announcing now that Cabinet has approved a reduction in the PCR test, which was 105 somewhere there, a reduction to less than half. It will now be $50, and I'm sure that would be a welcome change for others. As we continue, like everything else, we continue to watch the situation and to monitor and to listen to the cries of people. Things could happen, but we want to make a gradual change, and I think less than 50% now is a significant change. So thanks for adding that, allowing me to make that announcement so early, and the fact that beaches now will be extended. Our locals have been crying out, especially the children who are not going to school and they're at home, and other people. 10, 11 o'clock was too early. We extended to 1 o'clock. That too was too early. And now we have gone further to 4 p.m. And I think that would satisfy a wide cross-section of our people. The only thing I would beg of us, we know we love our beaches, our Grandans, our Bathway, all over the place. But I want to beg of us. Remember I said how we manage the protocols is critical to whether we open more or we close down. That we see what happens in countries. We want to open more. That is government's desire. And therefore, I would beg, let us not use this opportunity to congregate and socialize, because we know that's what the virus wants. Congregation, touching, contact, and it spreads. And therefore, I want to urge that use the beach, enjoy it, jog, run, whatever you want to do, but keep it in families, in households, together, and keep separate from other households, because the virus has no respect for friendship or who you know, and that is the only thing I would beg. So 4 o'clock, you might want it to go to 6, but you have to do something to ensure that we expand the hours until there's full freedom. So this is just for the next 2 weeks, and who knows, maybe after the next 2 weeks, we will be able to open up a little more. So I am thankful for these opportunities, and later on there may be an opportunity to make some more comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister, for echoing the sentiments of gratitude shared by the Prime Minister. It has indeed been a collaborative effort among many persons in the population and also persons overseas. And for that welcome announcement made with respect to the cost of PCR testing. I now invite the Attorney General, Ms. Forrester, to provide some further clarity on areas that are necessary within the COVID-19 regulations. AG, good morning to you. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone tuned in to today's post-cabinet briefing. I will today provide more details on the incoming Emergency Powers COVID-19 regulations, which will come into force on 6th October 2021 and expire on 19th October 2021. Likewise, discuss the introduction of remote hearings at the magistrates' courts. In relation to the Emergency Powers COVID-19 regulations, as the Prime Minister just indicated, there are several important changes that have been made to these regulations that will continue to impact the day-to-day lives of individuals residing, working, and visiting Grenada. Firstly, there will continue to be the curfew period commencing 7 p.m. nightly and ending at 4 a.m. in the morning daily, and that includes, as the Prime Minister stated, Saturdays and Sundays, meaning that the no-movement weekends have been discontinued. During the nightly curfew period, individuals are reminded that you are required to stay at home unless you are an essential worker or a worker otherwise exempted pursuant to the regulations. Individuals and businesses that have obtained prior approvals under the last 2 sets of COVID-19 regulations need not seek new approvals, as provisions have been made in the incoming regulations for those prior approvals to continue being valid. The time for accessing beaches and rivers, as Minister Modeste has indicated, has also changed from 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily, so individuals may continue to go to either place to exercise, but no picnics, no parties, or other such gatherings. It is important to remind individuals that notwithstanding that between 4 a.m. to 7 p.m. daily, individuals are allowed to move around, we continue to request that people restrict their movement to that which is necessary. In other words, we must be purposeful when leaving our homes, and that purpose must be for conducting legitimate business, as there continues to be a general prohibition on social activities and large gatherings. That maintains as the general framework of the COVID-19 regulations. There are additional businesses that will now be allowed to be opened, which includes your retail stores from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., gyms and fitness centers from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., businesses and establishments in the beautification industry across the board from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. by appointment only. That includes hairdressers, barbers, spas, nail technicians, and such other types of businesses. All professional offices may be opened on an appointment-only basis. That includes your real estate agents, surveyors, engineering firms, and such other professional businesses. Likewise, daycare centers can now open too from 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. All businesses, of course, are encouraged to continue to operate remotely insofar as they are able to do the same. Likewise, businesses continue to be required to follow the physical distancing and safety protocols. That is, your businesses must have the 6 feet markers in place. Their patrons must wear a face mask covering the nose, mouth, and chin. Customers must sanitize hands on entry. Businesses must keep proper, legible records of names, telephone numbers, and businesses, and addresses of people entering their businesses. Also, generally, as the Prime Minister indicated, we suggest that the safest option for businesses is to ensure that at no time you have no more than 50% capacity in your establishment. The government has noticed the overcrowding of some businesses in the last 2 weeks, and we urge those businesses to get back in line with the regulations. There are some businesses where employers, employees, and customers will be required to present their vaccination status. Firstly, after consulting with the business community and listening to their requests for measures in relation to them, likewise, the medical advice received from our scientific experts, all businesses where health permits or food handler certificates are required, employers must present the vaccination status of their employees to be able to open or reopen their businesses. Employees must present their vaccination status to be able to discharge their duties at those businesses. The businesses in question includes restaurants, hotels, guest houses, bars, and those in the beautification industry, so your barbers, your hairdressers, your spas, and such other businesses with that requirement. Secondly, residential care establishments or facilities, including elderly nursing homes, also have the requirement for the vaccination of all individuals working and living there to present their vaccination status to be able to offer the service or to continue to reside there. Thirdly, daycare centers also have the requirement to present the vaccination status of individuals working there, likewise to be able to open or to be able to discharge duties at that business as an employee. There is a further requirement for daycare centers, that is, individuals dropping off and picking up infants must also present their vaccination status to be able to attend or access the daycare centers. Fourthly, any business offering dining services, patrons are required to present their vaccination card to be able to dine in. This requirement does not extend to takeaway or drive-through services, as those may continue to be provided for all customers despite their vaccination status. The government appreciates that some people have only been partially vaccinated thus far, so there should be a transition period. As such, employees who have at least 1 dose will be permitted to work and do have a fixed time period within which to present proof of the second dose. In the case of the Pfizer vaccine, that is 3 weeks from your first dose, and in the case of the AstraZeneca vaccine, that is 3 weeks from your first dose. That is 8 weeks, from your first dose. These requirements are likely to be long-term and will continue to be a feature in future COVID-19 regulations. Some may have concerns that certain businesses have vaccination requirements now, while frontline healthcare workers are not being regulated in a similar manner as yet, or even before them. It is useful to put that in context now. As stated before, those business communities in question requested the industry be regulated in a certain manner, and the government has sought in a reasonably justifiable way to incorporate that request to allow them to resume operating in furtherance of the health and safety of the general public and restoration of much needed business activities. In relation to frontline healthcare workers, the government is extending steady advocacy on that matter to get better uptakes, and whilst that is done, the government must balance the reality of whether there will be sufficient workers to provide essential healthcare services and/or a regulatory framework that reduces that capacity. healthcare services, or an essential business that must be open, the closure of which puts lives in danger, versus restaurants and bars and such businesses which are more optional in nature but want to operate within that framework to continue doing business in a safer manner. One expects individuals to be concerned also about the measures for schools and the religious community. In relation to the religious community, there has been no change as yet. That is a form of large or mass gathering, and the government is still in discussion with the religious communities to decide how best to approach that sector in a safe manner. Once those discussions have been completed, amendments, as may be needed, will be made to the COVID-19 regulations. Until then, the religious community may continue to worship virtually. In relation to schools and educational institutions, as the Prime Minister stated, the main concerns are the health and safety of our educators and students. The vaccination rate among teachers, support staff, and students over 12 is significantly low, and against that backdrop, it is difficult for the government to announce the reopening of schools. As such, schools will continue to be virtual. Those are the fundamental changes in the incoming COVID-19 regulations. One appreciates that these measures continue to infringe on individual rights and freedoms in a manner that is necessary and reasonably justifiable in the interest of the health and safety of the general public. As the COVID-19 pandemic continues to unfold in Grenada, these measures will change and evolve in a manner that suits the situation at hand. On a separate but related matter, with respect to the magistracy, the government will soon be introducing for the first time in magistrates' courts in all magisterial districts in our islands virtual hearings via the Magistracy Remote Hearings Rules 2021. The government acknowledges that there is a high volume of people that seek justice in person daily at our various district magistrates' courts, and that the interaction in that setting needs to be reduced, having regard to the COVID-19 pandemic. Consequently, the soon-to-be introduced Magistracy Remote Hearing Rules shall facilitate remote court hearings of magistrate court matters as deemed appropriate by the adjudicating magistrate. It will apply to all types of matters before the magistrates' courts, including civil, criminal, traffic, and family proceedings. Remote hearings or real hearings, applying the same principles as face-to-face hearings with attorneys at law, parties, witnesses, and others who are permitted to be part of the hearing present. The primary media via which remote hearings will be conducted would include video conferencing platforms like Zoom platform, the Teams platform. It may be by telephone conference or such other media as may be indicated on the court summons. Individuals will continue to be served with a summons to attend court, and that summons will have notes accompanying it, giving details as to what to do to be able to participate in a remote hearing. The government is particularly mindful that at the magistrates' court level, numerous individuals are self-represented. Being conscious of that fact, provisions will be made for self-represented litigants to attend the magistrates' court, where facilities are in place for them to participate in a virtual hearing. There has recently been a retrofitting of all the various district magistrate courts, which involved installing all necessary modern equipment to facilitate virtual hearings and other changes to enhance the safety of individuals attending the court to reduce exposure to COVID-19 while seeking justice. As the magistracy resumes hearings, individuals should be aware that your hearing may be a remote hearing, and you will be informed by the magistrate's court office in advance. These are all of the matters that I will be addressing today. Thank you to everyone.
Thank you very much, AG, for a very thorough look at the new regulations, which go into effect as of midnight tonight. It is now time for us to provide members of the media who are present with an opportunity to ask questions of the panel. I see that we do have Callistra Faria, MTV, Mikey Hutchinson, Nancy Maguire from the Grenadian Voice, and Nisha Paul. I don't have an indication. Yes, I actually do. Callistra Faria has a question. She will be followed by Mikey Hutchinson and then Nancy. So Callistra Faria, please proceed with your questions. Good morning, Ms. Faria. Are you hearing us? Please proceed with your questions. Okay, she does not seem to be hearing us, so we move right along to Mikey Hutchinson. Mikey?
I was, excuse me, Press Secretary, I was hearing you fine. GIS was blocking my ability to unmute myself.
Okay, Callistra, please proceed with your questions.
AG. Good morning, AG.
Good morning.
I may have missed it, but I am seeing some regulations that are referring to lockup and prison facilities at the old SGU campus, I believe it is in Grand Anse. Can you give an explanation of this, please?
Hi, good morning. In relation to the prison facility at the Grand Anse campus, there was a need to have additional facilities to house prisoners who may have tested positive for COVID-19 before having them admitted to Her Majesty's Prison at Richmond Hill. Now, that is the reason why we have this new facility at where SGU formerly held its campus at Grand Anse. I'm unable to speak, for instance, to the number of cells at the facility. I will have to revert to the Commissioner to provide additional details in relation to the facility and how it operates and other matters relating to the same.
Do you have any further questions, Ms. Faria?
No, I would hope I get another opportunity.
Mikey, good morning to you. Please proceed with your questions.
Good morning to the panel, and good morning to my doctor, my former eye doctor. I don't recall hearing anything about travel resumption for Carriacou and Petit Martinique. Can someone clarify that for us as well? And the vaccination mandate for daycare and geriatric homes, how is that going to be enforced? I just want more information on the workings of that. So let's say the daycare center has some workers who are vaccinated and some who are not, or they had not, and you gave them a certain period of time to have those workers vaccinated. Are you going to have people going into those daycare centers and so on to investigate whether or not they are following those requirements?
Good morning. Firstly, in relation to the question on the travel restrictions between Grenada and Carriacou, those restrictions maintain as in the prior last two sets of COVID-19 regulations, so there has been no changes with respect to the same. In relation to daycare centers and elderly homes, or just all of the businesses who are subject to the requirement to present the vaccination status of the employees to be able to continue doing businesses, yes, there will be checks that are going to be done by the Chief Medical Officer and his team in relation to those establishments to be able to confirm that they are indeed compliant with the regulations, and if there is non-compliance, there is provision within the regulations for penalties to be attached. For instance, if a business is non-compliant, they may be closed for up to 7 days. Likewise, if an individual is non-compliant, you can, of course, be charged in the regular scheme that the regulations have provided for traditionally.
Mikey, do you have any further questions?
Just quickly, the currency for the PCR testing, I don't think it was mentioned, whether it was 50 EC or US dollars. Can that be clarified, please?
Yes, sorry, my error there. The original fee was, and I have it here, it was 150 US, which amounted to 405 EC. So now the proposed fee is 50 US, which amounts to 135 EC. So it's about 33%, 1/3 of the original fee. So I think, Mikey, that would make all of us who want to travel happy. Of course, I don't want to travel.
Thank you, Minister. Mikey, I'll move on now to Nancy Maguire. Nancy, good morning. Please proceed.
Good morning. I was just about to ask about the test, but my answer was forthcoming. On the decisions about the rate of vaccination among teachers and healthcare or frontline workers, can we get some statistics on that in terms of like what percentage of our teachers are vaccinated or not vaccinated? We must know those things if we make those decisions. And then I wanted to get a little more detail on the consultation process with the quote business community and how you came to determine the qualifications for vaccinated people to get into facilities or work in facilities. Thank you.
Nancy, with respect to your first question, I would take that. Just yesterday, I was involved in conversation with the Ministry of Health, and they actually have to disaggregate the data. As you would appreciate, it's a lot of data. So they do have to disaggregate that, and at some point in the future, I can't give a time frame. Hopefully, we will be provided with that level of detail with respect to the statistics.
So I will speak to, in terms of the consultation. I cannot speak to it in its entirety, but I know, for example, in the tourism sector, we have had discussions with the Grenada Hotel and Tourism Association, which also covers dining facilities like restaurants and so that are standalone facilities. And as a matter of fact, it went beyond discussions. They took their own initiatives and said to their staff that if you want to continue to work, then it's a prerequisite. Bearing in mind that we say to visitors who are non-Grenadians that in order to come to Grenada, you must be vaccinated. And so they're asking us, if you are requesting that we be fully vaccinated to travel to your country, what are the requirements for the workers, the people who are going to serve us? And so the persons in the tourism sector, by and large, and most of especially the larger hotels, you'll find that they're close to 100%, probably, and some of them are 100%, fully vaccinated. So even apart from discussions, they have taken on their own. And we know some businesses, I know several businesses that are not directly related to tourism. So for example, our local bank here, Core Bank, has taken that decision. Other businesses where I spoke, and I don't want to call every business that we've had, but we have had discussions, and sometimes we didn't even have to initiate it. Some businesses, the administration, recognizing the dire situation that we were in and that we were facing, decided and told us that this is what they were going to do. And I know with trade and so they would have had their own discussions on the matter. So while I cannot tell you the full extent, but several businesses were consulted on that matter in terms of the fully vaccinated.
Well, I was just thinking about the smaller little barber shops and beauty salons in the countryside. I just wonder how those businesses were consulted. Thank you.
Okay, it's a very valid question, but that one I cannot speak to, except to say that speaking to a few individuals, one-on-one myself, the cry was that they haven't been making any monies, and the cry on our side was that, from when I discussed with them, was that people are dying, our infection rate is growing, and even the ability of Grenadians to travel abroad is being, seriously jeopardized. And those who I spoke to said they were willing to make that kind of compromise, especially at this time where we are not out of the woods. I think it's a good, first step to say fully vaccinated, because we know, and I'm looking at the state, the data here, if you will allow me, Nancy, in terms of the cumulative deaths. I'm looking at what date, October 3rd, 157. Out of that, fully vaccinated, 2.6%. Partially vaccinated, 0.6%, and the unvaccinated 96.8%. And so based on the science, we are saying fully vaccinated is a good place to start, because we know that persons are less vulnerable to contract the disease or to transmit it. And so I think the businesses are looking that way too. But if you want more details, Madam Persec, that would have to be for the following, yes, because I wasn't really responsible for holding those conversations. But I can tell you from the tourism sector, we did have several discussions on it, and they were the ones who led the charge in that regard.
Thank you, Minister. And we do have to remember, too, that it also involved officials from the Ministry of Health, because it's a continuous balance between protecting, safeguarding lives and protecting the livelihoods of persons across the country, of people across the country. Nancy, would that be all from you? Okay, Nancy seems to have
Yes.
nothing further.
Thank you.
You're welcome, Nancy. We'll go back to Callistra, who has indicated that she has more questions. Callistra, you have the floor.
Thank you. Attorney General, vaccination in Grenada is not mandatory, it's not mandated by law, but I believe I heard you correct when you said that there are legal penalties for businesses which do not comply with the regulations to show the vaccination status of employees and the people doing business and so on. Can you reconcile this for me, please? That there are penalties for not doing something that is not mandated by law.
Good morning again. Now, the COVID-19 regulations are part of the Emergency Powers Act. The Emergency Powers Act creates the framework within which we are able to introduce particular things into the laws of Grenada in a times of a state of emergency. And that is what you have been done here. The way that the regulations themselves are actually drafted, you are required to present your vaccination status. So you actually deciding whether or not to present your vaccination status is optional, and you can therefore not be able to discharge those duties or provide those services. If you opt to provide those services or discharge those duties as an employee or provide those services as an employer, then you must comply with what the regulations provide for. Failing which, if you provide those services or discharge those duties in violation of the regulations, that is when the penalty comes into force. It is not a case that the penalty comes in any other circumstance.
And also one of the penalties that you indicated, AG, was closing a business for 7 days. But in the case of people who have only won those so far, there's a 3-week window and an 8-week window that cannot be shifted based on that is pegged to the issues with the vaccination. But you're going to close a business 7 days. What happens to the people who are not in compliance during that period? Next appointment may be 6 weeks away or 8 weeks away or 3 weeks away.
So this is linked to which vaccine, of course, you have taken. If you have taken the Pfizer vaccine, then it's 3 weeks. If you have taken AstraZeneca, then it is 8 weeks. Of course, in relation to businesses, there's a corresponding fixed time period. So between the day that you open, to be able to open, all of your employees must have at least 1 dose. If they do not have that 1 dose, then that particular person ought not to be working at your establishment until they have met that requirement. So we do anticipate that employers for themselves, for instance, will work out what they say to the employees, which for example, may involve them indicating that, okay, we now have these regulations that require us to have at least all of our employees to have at least 1 dose across the board before we're able to reopen. They will identify the employees who have met that requirement and probably indicate to the others that you have a fixed time period from a business perspective to be able to obtain the same. That type of dynamic we leave to the business owners themselves to work through.
Thank you, AG. We take the final question of the morning from Mikey Hutchinson.
Hi, yes, I just want to ask a follow-up question as it relates to sporting and entertainment and the use of amplified music. Has there been any change in that category?
No, there have been no changes in that category as yet.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, AG. As we put a wrap on things this morning, Minister, any final thoughts, comments from you?
Thank you very much. Just want to commend Team Grenada, and I know when situations arise like that in terms of any kind of disaster, Grenada comes forward, and I am really pleased that the outpouring of concern and work that has been put into the last few weeks. Commendations again to all Grenadians, but very importantly to all of our friends abroad, country, organizations, whatever. Secondly, I want to say that tourism is still struggling, and many persons may have heard me say that we were the first to be affected, impacted negatively, and we are still, we're probably going to be the last because we're still there struggling. But I want to say GHTA has really been a champion in taking initiatives, like for example, getting fully vaccinated staff and so on, implementing protocols. We have seen some breaches here and there, and I trust that they will self-regulate, peer regulate, however you want to say it, a little bit more. But so far, the majority have been very compliant. They have been extremely supportive in these last few weekends in terms of organizing the volunteers, providing meals and other logistics. I want to thank the business sector in general, those who have come forward. I also want to say that while tourism is still slow to recover, it is not dead. When I look at the stats, in January, we had 1,609 persons embarking from Miami. It fluctuated a little bit, went down in February, but in August, June was 5,000 plus, July 6,000 plus, August 7,000. And I haven't gotten the stats for the month that just went, that is September. So we have been growing steadily. We want to see that continue, because there are significant jobs that have been lost through this fallout with the COVID and so on. And we want to see that starting back. We're very cautious with what we do, but like other persons have recognized, other leaders have recognized, we have to learn to live with the new normal. As I said before, some might think we're going too slowly, but we need to do that to assess every decision we make and the implementation of those decisions, how they're impacting on us in Grenada generally. We are expecting some new flights from American Airlines from November the 1st, so in less than a month. They'll be adding Friday. Now they do Wednesday and Saturday, so it'll be coming in Wednesday, Friday, and Saturday. The Charlotte route, Grenadians recall that they had added a Charlotte route, and we expect them to resume those operations from November 27th. And there are some talks going around that from December 1st, there'll be daily flights coming from Miami with American Airlines. That would be very welcome. That is not finally confirmed yet. I guess it depends on how things happen, the fluidity of the disease and so on. So that is going to be a big plus for us. And also to mention about cruise, we've been asked. A number of the cruise lines have sent their schedules where they have included Grenada, and they're asking us what our decisions are. A few months ago, it was too early for us. We didn't have the level of vaccination in our country, the levels that we thought would give us that. Certainly we were nowhere near herd immunity, and we weren't close enough to give us that comfort. We are hoping that we will get the support of persons in the industry and outside of the industry, because the level doesn't respect whether you're in the industry or not, to increase the level of vaccination, to decrease the infection rate and all of these things. to the point where we can feel confident that they can come in. A number of other islands are doing it. I think we're the only one that has really held back that far. Some have started, some had to close off. But we're having talks on it. We have to put some more logistics in place for protection. And we have to establish some kind of corridor, some kind of bubble. We still cannot just let people go all over. One of the arguments, or well, maybe not an argument, but one of the discussions that we had was the fully vaccinated issue. I think that matter is resolved now, since everybody, most countries are requiring persons to be fully vaccinated, or they're giving privileges to persons who are fully vaccinated. So that was one of the reasons why we couldn't do the first one. Now we pretty much are on the same wavelength in terms of everybody who comes in must be fully vaccinated. And so we're making progress, and we hope that within the next month, we would be in a comfort area where we can say cruise can resume. At this point in time, we have not made a decision, but we recognize that a number of people would still continue to be displaced from their jobs if we don't get into the industry. We would not be reckless, but we will look at all the logistics together with the Ministry of Health, and we hope that gradually we would see that increase in the tourism industry, whether it's stayover passengers or cruise. And we're working as a team with all of the partners in the industry to make it happen, and to make it happen safely.
Thank you very much for your closing comments there, Minister. AG, before we come over to you for your wrap-up comments, I'll take quickly one question from GBN. There was a late notification, but I'll allow one question. GBN, please go ahead.
Hi, good morning, Joseph GBN. In relation, Madam Minister, with the SVG issue, recently you have alluded to a meeting with the SVG management. Can you give us an update?
Okay, all right. So we have been having this, we have had discussions, and they have sent us a proposal. The reality is, and I think it's no secret, that sometimes SVG Air is full, sometimes they travel with 1 or 2 passengers, and therefore it has not been, that route has not been economically viable or lucrative for them. They have been good friends to us, and they've kept it going more from a moral obligation than a financial, financial benefit to them. And so they were very frank with us, and they've come up with a new proposal, which is being perused and given consideration. So in the appropriate time, we will make the announcement as to where we have reached, but we are in active discussion with SVG Air.
Thank you, Minister. And now we go to AG for the final comments of the morning.
Thank you. I'd like to take a moment to thank my team of attorneys, likewise senior and support staff at the Ministry of Legal Affairs and the Attorney General's Chambers, whose dedication to task and commitment I truly appreciate. Likewise, the support we get from all ministries and departments like Health and Finance, Works, ICT, Government Printry. These are great team efforts, and I appreciate these efforts. To the general public, I urge us all to continue to choose the better path as we live through the COVID-19 pandemic. I beseech each of you to follow the regulations. I also want to take a moment to extend condolences to the entire legal fraternity of Grenada, the law firm of Lewis and Renwick, Deborah St. Bernard, Trevor St. Bernard, and the entire family of the late Cosmos St. Bernard Queen's Counsel, one of our most distinguished attorneys at law in Grenada. May he rest in peace, have eternal life, and his family be comforted.
Thank you very much, AG, and by extension, we offer sympathies, condolences to all families across Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique, who of course have lost loved ones during the course of this pandemic. As the Prime Minister indicated, 130 of those who have died from COVID-19 are our senior citizens. In bringing an end to this morning's post-cabinet press briefing, I just want to quickly identify some of the highlights in terms of the regulations. So the nightly curfew will continue from 7 p.m. to 4 a.m. There's a slight adjustment there. The no movement weekends, that has been discontinued. Retail stores across the country will open. Beach access extended 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily. Dine-in services in the food sector will resume. Gyms, fitness centers, daycare centers, businesses in the beauty sector will reopen, but there is the vaccine requirement for staff, and the Attorney General ably explained that this morning. There's been no change in the regulation for churches, so virtual services will continue. The travel restrictions are still in place for travel between Grenada, Carriacou, and PT Martinique. And Minister Modeste Curwen also announced that there's a new price for PCR testing, moving from $150 US to $50 US. That brings us to the end of this morning's post-cabinet press briefing. I am Press Secretary Philomena Robertson. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us, to the GIS production team, to members of the media, and of course our listening and viewing audience. Until we meet again, continue to be safe.